This is Unemployed Jeff. Conversations about identity, uncertainty, and what's left when work has kind of fallen away. As you can assume, I'm Jeff. And my goal is you walk away at least feeling like you're not alone and knowing that you have value. Who is this for? This is for people who are unemployed, underemployed, burned out, or quietly questioning their career identity. Heavy stuff. But it's also, I just want people to know you're not alone. It's for people who are tired of being told to reframe everything as an opportunity. It's for people who are dealing with the invisible work of holding themselves together while the outside world keeps asking for updates. Sometimes it'll just be talking. Sometimes I'll have conversations with other people who've been through this, not because they figured it out, but because they lived through the in-between, or people who are currently living in the in-between. If you're listening to this and thinking, oh, someone finally said it out loud, then this is for you. And I don't know where the podcast is going to go yet. And honestly, that to me feels pretty appropriate. What I do know is that I'm going to show up honestly. I'm not going to rush the story. And I'm not going to pretend this part of life doesn't matter. If you're here, thank you. And if you're in the middle of your own reset, you're not behind, you're not broken, and you're not doing this wrong. I'm glad you're here. Ghosting after interviews. When interviews go well and then nothing happens. This is one of the hardest parts of this process. It isn't the rejection, it's silence. Rejection at least gives you an ending. Silence keeps the story open. And when you're already in a fragile place, open loops can be exhausting. You start replaying the moment. You replay the conversation, the tone, the laughs, the nods. You remember the moment they said, we'll be in touch soon. And you believe it because nothing about the conversation felt dishonest. This would often play out early in my unemployment with my wife and I, where I'd either come down from my office or even when I had a, face-to-face interview, I'd walk in and she'd ask, how did it go? How do you feel? And often it was, I feel great. I presented myself well. I answered the questions, I think, in a thoughtful way. I felt confident. I felt that I presented myself the best I could. And then a few days pass. And it still feels normal. But then a week passes. And you tell yourself, oh, they're busy. 2 weeks pass. You check your inbox more than you want to admit. And that's when the negotiating starts. Did I imagine the connection? Did I say something wrong? Did I misread the whole thing? What ghosting actually does. Ghosting messes with your sense of reality. It's not just the absence of information. It's the absence of context. You don't know if the role disappeared, the budget froze, someone internal changed their mind, or you were never really being considered. So your brain fills in the gaps. And when information is missing, most people don't assume the system failed. They assumed they did. That's the damage. What happens when they finally reach back out? And it's months later. They reach back out. An email appears out of nowhere. Hey, Jeff, just circling back. And you say to yourself, circling back to what exactly? It's unclear. It feels like a conversation from another season of your life. And here's the part that people don't like to admit: you still respond. Not because it feels good, not because you're excited, but because you're in survival mode. Because you want to prove something to them, to yourself, to the version of you that still believes effort matters. So you say yes. You re engage. You pull the thread. You act like time didn't pass and your nervous system wasn't slowly aging in the meantime. There's a specific kind of professionalism that kicks in where you pretend you weren't emotionally different 2 months ago. You're like, absolutely happy to connect, while you're quietly thinking, I have lived an entire life since then. And why does this happen sometimes? I mean, it isn't always malice. I mean, companies stall, priority shifts, uh, budgets freeze, unfreeze, refreeze again, whatever. But when you're on the receiving end, it doesn't feel procedural. It feels like being paused. And then suddenly you're expected to be ready again. So if you've done this, if you've reopened conversations you've already closed emotionally, I'm not going to call that desperation. Let's call that adaptation. Why does this keep happening? This ghosting stuff. And here's another part that's rarely acknowledged. And it kind of touches on something I said earlier. Ghosting isn't always intentional. It's often a byproduct of organizations that are overwhelmed, uncertain, or afraid to commit. Things happen. Recruiters lose visibility, hiring managers hesitate, decisions get delayed and then quietly abandoned. But even if it's not personal, it still lands personally, because from the outside, all you feel is disappearance. And at some point, you realize you're not waiting for feedback anymore. You're just waiting for proof that the conversation actually happened. And then there's the opposite of being ghosted. It's when closure comes too fast. The opposite of silence, the abrupt closure. It can happen so fast it almost feels unreal. You wake up in the morning and apply for a role that is clearly in your wheelhouse. You recognize the language, you understand the problem they're trying to solve, you take the time to format your resume, not the generic one, the careful one. You write a cover letter that actually speaks to what they're asking for and how your experience fits. You do everything you're told you're supposed to do. And by the afternoon, you get the email. Thanks for applying. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Copy, paste, no context. It's jarring, but at least it's clean. But what about when this happens after a good interview? The part that really sticks, though, is when, you know, you get these copy and paste and it's after you've interviewed. You felt the connection. You presented yourself well. The conversation flowed. You left thinking that felt aligned. Not perfect, just human and solid. And then the same email arrives. The exact same copy and paste response. No feedback, no signal, no indication of what mattered or didn't, just a hard stop. There is something uniquely disorienting about receiving a form rejection from someone who laughed at your joke 2 weeks ago. It makes you wonder if the interview happened or if it was just a very elaborate hallucination. Why does this hit so hard? It's not that the problem isn't that they said no. It's that everything meaningful about the interaction gets erased. The time you invested, the vulnerability of showing up, the effort to be present and prepared, and it's all flattened into a template. And your brain doesn't know what to do with that because we're wired for cause and effect. And when there's no explanation, the mind turns inward. You find yourself replaying interviews that ended abruptly, wondering how something that felt real could be dismissed so cleanly. That's not rumination. That's your mind trying to make sense of a system that doesn't explain itself. If you're carrying unanswered conversations around in your head, that's not weakness. Let's go back to the emotional weight of no closure, getting ghosted. Because closure matters more than people realize. It helps your nervous system stand down. It lets your attention move forward. Without it, conversations linger in your head. You carry them around. You rehearse alternate versions. You imagine emails that never arrive. And over time, that unresolved weight accumulates, not dramatically, but quietly. So if you're carrying around unanswered conversations in your head, like I said, that's not weakness. It's what happens when closure disappears. Silence isn't neutral, it has weight. And if you're feeling that weight right now, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone in it. We'll keep naming these things as they come. If you're in this space, you don't need to fix it right now. You just need to know you're not alone in it. We'll talk again soon.